Princess Zarathel stood in the great hall of the space station, her blue crystal skin catching the light from distant stars. She hated this place. She hated this moment. Most of all, she hated what she was about to do. The war had been going on for 3 years now. 3 long years of death and destruction between her people, the Veltar, and the humans. Her father's empire was strong, with ships that could destroy planets and technology that made other species bow in fear. But somehow the humans kept fighting back. They were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to be easy to defeat. The humans lived short lives, only about 80 years compared to her people's 1,000-year lifespans. Their ships were smaller and their weapons less powerful. Yet they had not only survived but had actually pushed the Veltar forces back in several star systems. Now the Galactic Council wanted peace. They had called both sides to this neutral space station and demanded a solution. The answer they came up with made Zarathel's stomach turn with disgust. Marriage. An arranged marriage between her and some human soldier. Princess Zarathel called Ambassador Kethron, his forearms gesturing toward the other side of the room. Your intended approaches. She turned to look at the human walking toward her. This was Captain Marcus Chen, the man she was supposed to marry in just a few hours. He looked so ordinary that she almost laughed. He was not tall, maybe average height for a human. His hair was brown and cut short in a military style. His skin was that strange pinkish color that humans had, so different from her own crystal blue skin. But his eyes were what caught her attention. They were dark brown, almost black, and they seemed to see everything. When he looked at her, she felt like he was studying her, learning about her in ways that made her uncomfortable. "Princess," Marcus said, stopping in front of her and giving a small bow. His voice was calm and polite. "I am honored to meet you. Are you?" Zarathel asked, her own voice cold. "Are you really honored to be forced into marriage with an enemy?" Marcus smiled slightly. "You are not my enemy anymore. After today, you will be my wife. That makes you someone I will protect with my life." The way he said it bothered her. It was not romantic or emotional. It sounded like a statement of fact, like he was talking about the weather or reporting military information. "This marriage means nothing," she told him. "It is just politics. A piece of paper to stop our people from killing each other." Perhaps, Marcus agreed. But sometimes the most important things start as just politics. Before she could ask what he meant, the ceremony began. Representatives from dozens of different alien species filled the hall. The Gelthor with their tentacled faces, the rock-like Threnodi, the insect hive mind of Zestar, all of them watching, all of them hoping this marriage would bring peace to a galaxy tired of war. The wedding followed both Veltar and human traditions. Zarathel wore the crystal crown of her people, while Marcus wore the formal uniform of the human military. The ceremony was conducted by a neutral party, a member of the ancient wise ones who had been keeping peace in the galaxy for thousands of years. When it came time for vows, Zarathel spoke the required words in a flat voice, making it clear to everyone that this was duty, not love. But when Marcus spoke, something in his tone made her pay closer attention. "I promise to stand beside you," he said, looking directly into her eyes. "I promise to protect you from any threat, seen or unseen. I promise to learn everything about you, to understand you in ways that others cannot. And I promise that as long as I live, no harm will come to you or those you love." The words should have been comforting. Instead, they sent a chill down her spine. There was something in the way he said, "Learn everything about you," that sounded less like a romantic promise and more like a military objective. When the ceremony ended, the guests celebrated with food and drinks from their various worlds. Zarathel watched as Marcus moved through the crowd, speaking to representatives from different species. What surprised her was how easily he talked to all of them. The Gelthor communicated partly through color changes in their skin. Marcus seemed to understand their color language perfectly. When talking to the hive mind representative, he used the quick clicking sounds that their species preferred. With the rock-like Threnodi, he spoke in the slow, deep tones that showed respect in their culture. How did he know so much about so many different species? The war between humans and Veltar had only been going on for 3 years. Before that, humans were new to this part of the galaxy. They should not have had time to learn about all these different alien cultures. "Your husband is very impressive," said Ambassador Kethron, approaching her with a drink in one of his 4 hands. "He speaks 7 different alien languages fluently." "How many human languages are there?" Zarathel asked. "Only about 6,000 on their homeworld," Kethron replied. "But what is interesting is that he learned our languages in just the past 3 years. Very quickly, even for a human." That made her pause. Humans were supposed to be quick learners, but learning 7 alien languages in 3 years while fighting a war seemed almost impossible, unless he had been studying alien languages before the war started. But why would humans do that if they were new to this part of space? Later that evening, on the ship that would take them to their new home, Zarathel found herself alone with Marcus for the first time. They were in the main living area of their quarters, a space designed to be comfortable for both their species. "You can sleep in the other room," she told him. "This marriage may be real on paper, but I have no intention of playing the loving wife." "I understand," Marcus said calmly. "You need time to adjust to this situation. I will not pressure you." "Good," she replied, then paused. "I have a question. How did you learn to speak so many alien languages so quickly?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, as if deciding how much to tell her. "My people believe in being prepared," he finally said. "We study everything we might encounter. It is better to know and not need the knowledge than to need it and not have it. You studied alien languages before you ever met aliens? We studied everything we could find. Old broadcasts, data from crashed ships, anything that might teach us about other species. We wanted to be ready when we finally met our neighbors in the galaxy." That answer bothered her more than she wanted to admit. It suggested that humans had been planning for contact with alien species long before it happened. They had been preparing, studying, learning about potential enemies and allies before they even knew which species would be which. "Why?" she asked. Marcus looked at her with those dark, calculating eyes. "Because knowledge is survival, princess. The more we understand about the universe around us, the better chance we have of thriving in it. Your people are beautiful, powerful, and advanced. We wanted to understand you so we could find a way to coexist. War was never our first choice. Yet you were very good at it," Zarathel pointed out. "We are good at many things when we need to be," Marcus replied. "That is what humans do. We adapt." As she went to bed that night in the separate room, Zarathel found herself thinking about that word. Adapt. It seemed like such a simple concept, but something about the way Marcus had said it made it sound much more significant and much more dangerous than she had first thought. 2 weeks into their journey aboard the diplomatic ship Concordia, Zarathel began to notice things about her new husband that made her uncomfortable. Small things at first, but they added up to create a picture that she did not like. Marcus never seemed to fully sleep. She had walked past his room late at night and seen him lying in bed with his eyes closed, but his breathing was wrong. It was too controlled, too aware. When she made a small noise in the hallway, she saw his eyes move under his closed eyelids, tracking the sound. Real sleep did not work like that. During meals in the ship's dining hall, she watched how the crew interacted with him. The Concordia had a mixed crew with representatives from 12 different species, all working together for the diplomatic mission. Marcus was polite to everyone, never giving orders or acting superior. Yet somehow every alien crew member seemed to defer to him in small ways. When the Gelthor navigator had a question about the route, he asked Marcus instead of the ship's captain. When the Threnody engineer needed help with a problem, she brought it to Marcus first. Even the ship's doctor, a member of the wise healer caste from Zenthari Prime, would pause and look to Marcus before making medical decisions about the human crew members. It was not fear exactly. It was more like instinct, as if some part of their minds recognized Marcus as something important, something that needed to be respected, even when their conscious thoughts did not understand why. "You seem troubled, princess," Marcus said one morning as they shared breakfast. He was eating human food while she had her traditional Veltar crystal fruits. "Is something bothering you? Why does the crew ask you questions?" She said directly. "You are not the captain. You are not even officially part of the ship's command structure." Marcus paused, a piece of bread halfway to his mouth. "They ask because I usually have useful answers." "How do you have useful answers about navigation? About engineering? About medical issues for species you have only known for 3 years?" "I listen," Marcus said simply. "I watch, I learn. When someone explains a problem to me, I try to understand not just the problem but the system the problem exists in. Usually the solution becomes obvious once you understand the whole system." That afternoon, Zarathel decided to test this claim. She went to the ship's library and accessed Marcus's military records. What she found there made her hands shake as she read. The Battle of Proxima Gate had been the turning point of the war. Her people had sent 800 of their finest warships against a small human fleet of only 200 vessels. The Veltar had better weapons, better shields, better everything. It should have been a simple victory. Instead, it had been a disaster for her people. Not just a defeat, but a complete humiliation. The human fleet, commanded by Marcus, had not only won, but had captured over 300 Veltar ships without destroying them. They had somehow turned the Veltar's own superior technology against them. Reading the battle reports made her head hurt. Marcus had not won through superior firepower or lucky accidents. He had won through a strategy so complex and layered that even now, 3 years later, Veltar military analysts were still trying to understand how he had done it. The humans had somehow known exactly how Veltar ships would respond to different attacks. They had predicted the movements of the Veltar fleet with impossible accuracy. They had used weapons and tactics that specifically exploited weaknesses in Veltar, technology that the Veltar themselves did not even know existed. But the most disturbing part was a note at the end of the official report. It mentioned that interrogation of captured Veltar officers revealed that the humans had not tortured them or threatened them. Instead, Marcus had simply talked to them. And somehow in those conversations he had learned things about Veltar military doctrine and ship design that took the prisoners weeks to realize they had revealed. That evening, there was a formal dinner with representatives from several worlds who had joined them at a space station along their route. Zarathel watched Marcus work the room like an artist creating a masterpiece. He spoke to the insectoid ambassador in their clicking language, but he did more than just communicate. He somehow knew that this particular subspecies showed respect by slightly angling their heads to the left, a detail so minor that even Zarathel had not noticed it. When talking to the energy-based Vorthan delegate, he adjusted his speech patterns to match the frequency that their species found most pleasant. But it was his conversation with the trade representative from the Merchant Guild that really worried her. Marcus asked innocent-seeming questions about shipping routes and cargo manifests. To anyone listening, it sounded like polite small talk about commerce and trade. Zarathel had grown up in the royal court. She knew how to listen for hidden meanings in conversations. Marcus was not making small talk. He was gathering intelligence about military supply lines, troop movements, and strategic resources. And he was doing it so smoothly that his target seemed happy to give him the information. After dinner, she confronted him in their quarters. "What are you really doing here, Marcus? This is supposed to be a diplomatic mission, but you are acting like a spy." Marcus looked at her calmly. "I am doing exactly what I promised in our wedding vows, Princess. I am protecting you." "How is gathering intelligence about shipping routes protecting me?" "Because I need to know what threats might exist," he said. "The war between our peoples has officially ended, but not everyone is happy about that. There are groups on both sides who might try to hurt you to restart the fighting. I need to know who they are, where they operate, and what resources they have access to." His explanation sounded reasonable, but something about it felt wrong. "You are planning something," she said. "What are you planning?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, and for the first time she saw something in his expression that was not entirely human. It was the look of a predator that knew exactly where its prey was and was simply waiting for the right moment to strike. "I am planning for every possibility," he said. "That is what my people do. We consider every potential future and prepare for all of them. It is how we survived long enough to reach the stars." "Survived what?" "Everything," Marcus said. "Disease, war, natural disasters, resource shortages, climate change, hostile environments, dangerous animals, and dangerous people. My species has faced extinction dozens of times in our history. Each time we survived because we were prepared for threats that other species would never even consider." Zarathel felt a chill run down her spine. "What kind of threats?" "Every kind," Marcus replied. "We prepare for the threats we know about, and we prepare for threats we have never seen before. We study every species we encounter not because we want to hurt them, but because we need to understand them. Understanding leads to survival. Understanding leads to control," she corrected. Marcus tilted his head slightly, considering her words. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But control is just another form of survival, Princess. And survival is the one thing humans are very, very good at." That night, Zarathel lay awake in her bed, thinking about her husband's words. She had married him thinking he was just a soldier, a warrior who happened to be good at fighting. Now she was beginning to realize that Marcus was something much more complex and much more dangerous. He was not just a fighter. He was a student of everything around him, constantly learning and adapting and preparing for futures that might never happen. The question that kept her awake was simple. What was he preparing for now? And did it involve her people surviving whatever he was planning? The attack came without warning on their third week aboard the Concordia. Zarathel was in the observation lounge watching the stars when the ship's alarms began screaming. Emergency lights flashed red as the captain's voice echoed through the corridors. All crew to emergency stations. We have been boarded by hostile forces. This is not a drill. Zarathel's first thought was to find Marcus. She ran through the corridors toward their quarters, but the ship shook violently as explosions echoed from somewhere below. The gravity systems flickered, making her stumble as the artificial gravity wavered. She found Marcus in their quarters, but he was not the same person she had been living with for 3 weeks. The polite, calm diplomat was gone. In his place stood something that made her blood freeze in her veins. He was putting on body armor with movements that were too fast and too precise. His face had changed completely. The friendly expression was replaced by something cold and calculating. His eyes moved constantly, tracking sounds and movements that she could not even detect. When he looked at her, it was like being examined by a predator deciding whether she was prey or something to protect. "Stay behind me," he said, and his voice was different too. Harder, sharper. "Do exactly what I tell you, when I tell you. Do not question my orders. Do not hesitate. Lives depend on you following my instructions perfectly." Before she could ask what was happening, armed figures burst through their door. Veltar soldiers in combat armor, their crystal blue skin marking them as her own people. But these were extremists, the faction that had opposed the peace treaty from the beginning. "Princess Zarathel," the leader called out, his weapon pointed at Marcus. "Step away from the human. We are here to rescue you from this dishonor." "I do not need rescuing," Zarathel replied, though part of her wondered if that was true. "The marriage is a betrayal of our people," the soldier continued. "We will end this disgrace and restart the war that should have been won years ago." Marcus had not moved during this exchange. He stood perfectly still, but Zarathel could feel tension radiating from him like heat from a fire. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet and almost conversational. "You made 3 mistakes," he told the Veltar soldiers. "First, you assumed that your armor could protect you from human weapons. Second, you assumed that there was only one human to deal with. Third, you assumed that I would wait for you to finish talking. What happened next took less than 10 seconds, but Zarathel would remember every detail for the rest of her life." Marcus moved like liquid death. His first attack was not at the soldier's weapon or armor, but at a specific spot on the back of the Veltar's neck. Zarathel knew that spot. It was a pressure point that only Veltar doctors learned about during medical training. Touching it correctly would cause instant paralysis. How did a human know about Veltar anatomy in that much detail? The soldier dropped, paralyzed but alive. The second soldier tried to fire his weapon, but Marcus was already moving. He grabbed the soldier's wrist and twisted it in a way that made the Veltar's fingers open reflexively, dropping the gun. Then Marcus struck the soldier's throat with his fingertips, hitting another pressure point that cut off the soldier's ability to speak or breathe properly. The third soldier was the most dangerous, firing energy blasts that left burn marks on the walls. Marcus did not try to dodge the shots. Instead, he moved in a pattern that used the room's furniture and door frames to block the energy beams while getting closer to his target. When he reached the soldier, he did something that made Zarathel gasp. He pressed his hand against the soldier's armor in a specific place, right over the heart. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the soldier collapsed, his armor's power systems flickering and dying. Marcus had somehow known exactly where to touch the armor to cause a complete system failure. In 10 seconds, 3 armed and trained Veltar soldiers had been defeated by one human who was not even breathing hard. "How?" Zarathel whispered. Marcus was checking the soldiers, making sure they were alive but unable to continue fighting. "Knowledge," he said simply. "We studied your people very carefully during the war. We learned about your biology, your technology, your tactics, your culture, everything we could discover. Information saves lives. But you knew things that only our doctors know. Pressure points that are secret medical knowledge." "Nothing is secret if you know how to look," Marcus replied. He was searching through the soldiers' equipment now, examining their weapons and armor with expert efficiency. "Your people treated human prisoners during the war. Our doctors examined every prisoner who was returned to us. Medical scans, blood tests, neurological evaluations. We learned how your healing techniques worked by studying what you did to our people. The implications of this hit her like a physical blow. You learned our medical secrets by studying your own wounded soldiers?" "We learned everything we could," Marcus confirmed. "Medicine, technology, psychology, culture, biology. Every returned prisoner was debriefed for weeks. Every piece of Veltar equipment we captured was studied and analyzed. Every intercepted communication was decoded and examined. We built a complete picture of your people from thousands of small pieces of information. More explosions echoed through the ship, and Marcus's expression became even more focused. The attack is not over. These soldiers were just the advance team. More will be coming. How many more? Marcus listened to sounds that she could not identify. Distant footsteps, mechanical noises, vibrations through the ship's hull. 40, maybe 50 total. 3 teams of soldiers, plus technical specialists to take control of the ship. They want to capture you alive and make it look like I was killed defending you. How could you possibly know all that from those sounds? Because I understand how military operations work, Marcus said. He was assembling weapons now, putting together a rifle from parts he had taken from the defeated soldiers. For this type of mission, with these objectives, this is the size force they would need. I am not guessing, Princess. I am calculating based on known factors. She watched him work and realized something that terrified her. Marcus was not lucky or unusually skilled. He was operating from a base of knowledge about her people that was so complete and detailed that he could predict their actions like a scientist predicting the behavior of laboratory specimens. You have been studying us like insects, she said. Marcus paused in his work and looked at her. For a moment his expression softened slightly. Not insects, he said. Like people we needed to understand in order to survive. Your people are beautiful, intelligent, and powerful. We respected you enough to study you very carefully. And now you can defeat us because you understand us better than we understand ourselves. Now I can protect you, Marcus corrected, which is what I promised to do. Another explosion shook the ship closer this time. Marcus stood up, the assembled weapon in his hands. Stay close to me. We are going to move through the ship to the bridge. I need to coordinate with the ship's security forces to end this attack. You are going to fight 50 soldiers? I am going to defeat them, Marcus said with quiet certainty. Because I know how they think, how they move, and how they fight. I know their equipment better than they do. I know their tactics before they use them. I know their weaknesses before they realize they have them. As they moved through the ship's corridors, Zarathel followed behind Marcus and watched him work. He moved like he owned the ship, taking routes that avoided the attackers while positioning himself to strike when necessary. He did not fight like a warrior seeking glory or revenge. He fought like a scientist conducting an experiment where the results were already known. And the most terrifying part was that she was beginning to understand that this was not exceptional for humans. This was just how they approached every problem. They studied, they learned, they adapted, and then they acted with the precision of a machine that had been specifically designed for the task. By the time they reached the bridge, Marcus had defeated 12 more soldiers without taking a single injury. He had not been lucky. He had simply been better prepared than his enemies. And preparation, she was learning, was the most dangerous human trait of all. After the attack was over and the ship was safe again, Zarathel could not sleep. She kept thinking about what she had seen Marcus do, and the casual way he had explained his knowledge of her people. The questions in her mind would not go away, so she decided to find answers. The Concordia had access to the Galactic Archive, the greatest collection of historical information in known space. Most records were available to anyone, but some were restricted to high-ranking officials. As a princess of the Veltar Empire, Zarathel had access to files that few beings had ever seen. She went to the ship's data center late at night, when most of the crew was sleeping. The archive interface was a complex holographic display that could show information from thousands of worlds, across millions of years of galactic history. She started with a simple search, human contact with other species. The results were not what she expected. According to the official records, humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. They had made first contact with the galactic community 30 years ago. But as Zarathel dug deeper into the historical files, she found older records that told a different story. There were references to humans going back much further. Ancient trading logs from the Merchant Guild mentioned bipedal mammals from the Outer Rim selling unusual technologies. Archaeological reports from a dozen worlds described artifacts that matched human design patterns, but were thousands of years old. The deeper she searched, the more disturbing the pattern became. Humanity's official history said they were new to space travel, but the evidence suggested they had been traveling between stars for much longer than anyone realized. She found a file that made her hands tremble as she read it. It was a report from the Zephyrian Empire, a powerful civilization that had controlled a large section of the galaxy 2,000 years ago. The report described contact with a species they called the adapters and beings, who looked like humans but showed an unusual ability to integrate into any society they encountered. The report was written by High Scholar Vexithani of Zephyr Prime. The adapters are unlike any species we have previously encountered. They show no interest in conquest through military force. Instead, they seem driven to understand and integrate with existing social structures. They learn our language within weeks, master our technology within months, and begin improving our systems within years. Initially, we welcome their contributions. Now we are concerned about the long-term implications of their presence. Zarathel searched for more information about the Zephyrian Empire. What she found chilled her to the bone. The Zephyrians had been one of the most advanced civilizations in galactic history. With technology that surpassed even current standards, their empire had lasted for 3,000 years, surviving wars, plagues, and natural disasters. Then, about 1,500 years ago, their civilization had simply collapsed. Not through invasion or catastrophe, but through what historians called social dissolution. The Zephyrians had gradually lost interest in maintaining their empire, their technology, even their culture. Within a few generations, one of the greatest civilizations in galactic history had faded into nothing. The last Zephyrian record spoke of a strange phenomenon. Their people had become dependent on the adapters for everything. Technology, governance, even basic problem-solving had been gradually taken over by the helpful aliens. When the adapters eventually left, the Zephyrians found themselves unable to function without them. Zarathel found similar patterns in files from other extinct civilizations. The Karathi Dominion, the Stellar Federation of Nexus, the Crystal Kingdoms of Vorth, all of them had records of contact with humans or human-like beings in the centuries before their collapse. All of them described the same pattern: helpful integration followed by gradual dependence, followed by social collapse after the humans disappeared. But the most disturbing file was from the ancient Zelkari Empire. It was a personal journal entry from Empress Thalavan, written just months before her civilization fell. The humans do not conquer. They do not destroy. They simply become essential. They solve problems we did not know we had. They improve systems we thought were perfect. They make themselves so useful that we cannot imagine functioning without them. And then when we realize what has happened, it is too late. We have forgotten how to solve our own problems. We have forgotten how to adapt and grow. We have become children depending on parents who will someday leave us behind. Zarathel sat back in her chair, her mind reeling. The pattern was clear across thousands of years and dozens of civilizations. Humanity did not destroy other species through war or violence. They destroyed them through helpfulness. They made themselves indispensable, and when they left, the civilizations they had helped collapsed from their inability to function independently. She accessed more recent files, looking for information about humanity's current activities. What she found was terrifying in its implications. Over the past 50 years, human advisors and specialists had been invited to work with dozens of species. They were helping improve technology, streamline governance, solve environmental problems, and enhance military capabilities. Every species that had accepted human help had reported remarkable improvements in their society. But some of the older reports showed a troubling trend. The species were beginning to rely more and more heavily on human expertise. They were starting to lose their own innovation and problem-solving abilities. A report from the Centauri Republic, written just 5 years ago, was particularly disturbing. Our human advisors have been incredibly beneficial to our society. They have helped us improve our agricultural output by 300%, revolutionize our transportation systems, and solve our energy crisis. However, we have noticed that our own scientists and engineers seem less motivated to pursue independent research. When problems arise, our first instinct is now to ask the humans for solutions, rather than developing our own approaches. Zarathel realized she was looking at a strategy that spanned thousands of years. Humanity did not just adapt to survive. They adapted other species out of existence. Not through violence, but through a form of evolutionary competition that operated on the level of entire civilizations. The most chilling realization was that this might not even be intentional. The report suggested that individual humans were genuinely trying to help the species they worked with. But the collective effect of human involvement was always the same. Other species gradually lost their ability to compete and eventually disappeared. She found one final file that made her understand the full scope of what she was dealing with. It was a communication fragment from an unknown source, transmitted on ancient frequencies that had not been used for millennia. To any species that encounters this message, beware the helpful ones. They come not as conquerors but as friends. They offer solutions to your problems, improvements to your technology, answers to your questions. They seem to want only to help you become better than you are. This is how they destroy you. Not through weapons or hatred, but through kindness that makes you weak. By the time you realize what has happened, you will be unable to exist without them, and humans always eventually move on to help someone else. Zarathel turned off the archive interface and sat in the darkness of the data center. She now understood what Marcus had meant when he said that humans were good at adapting. They did not just adapt to their environment, they changed their environment to adapt to them. And they did it so gradually and helpfully that their victims welcomed their own extinction. The question now was, what to do with this knowledge? Should she warn her people? Should she confront Marcus? Or was it already too late? How many Veltar were already beginning to depend on human assistance and expertise? As she walked back to her quarters, she realized that she was facing a choice that would determine not just her own future, but the future of every thinking species in the galaxy. The humans were not evil. They might not even be aware of the full implications of their actions. But they were something far more dangerous than evil. They were evolution in action, and evolution did not care about the feelings or wishes of the species it left behind. Zarathel found Marcus in the observation lounge the next morning, sitting quietly and watching the stars. He looked peaceful, almost innocent. It was hard to believe that this calm man represented an existential threat to every intelligent species in the galaxy. "You could not sleep," he said without turning around. It was not a question. "How did you know?" "You were in the data center for 4 hours last night," Marcus replied. "The ship's computer logs all access to the Galactic Archive. I assumed you were researching something that troubled you." She sat down across from him, studying his face. "You know what I found, don't you?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled sadly.
"I know what you found because I have read the same files."
"The pattern is clear once you know how to look for it. Did you always know about what your people do to other species?" "I suspected," Marcus admitted. "The evidence was there if you were willing to see it. Human history is full of stories about civilizations that disappeared after contact with us. We told ourselves it was coincidence or that those civilizations were already failing, but the pattern was too consistent to ignore." Zarathel felt anger rising in her chest. "So you knew and you still went ahead with this marriage? You still helped plan the integration of our peoples?" "Yes," Marcus said simply. "Why?" Marcus turned to look at her directly. "Because I love you," he said. "And because I love my species. And because I believe there might be a way for both of our peoples to survive what is coming." "What do you mean?" Marcus stood up and walked to the large window that showed the stars outside. "Evolution is not evil, Princess. It is not good either. It simply is. My people are not consciously trying to destroy other species. We are just being what we evolved to be. Problem solvers who adapt to any environment. But the result is the same," Zarathel pointed out. "Other species become extinct." "Usually, yes," Marcus agreed. "But extinction is not the only possible outcome of evolutionary pressure. Sometimes species evolve together. Sometimes they find ways to coexist that make both stronger. Is that what you think will happen with our peoples?" "I think it is possible," Marcus said. "But only if both sides understand what they are dealing with. Your people need to know about humanity's history. My people need to acknowledge what we do to other species. And both sides need to choose consciously to find a different path." Zarathel stood up and joined him at the window. "What kind of different path?" "True partnership," Marcus said. "Not humans helping Veltar become better at being Veltar. Not Veltar learning to depend on human solutions. But both species working together to become something new, something that neither could become alone." "That sounds like a beautiful dream," Zarathel said. "But how could it work in practice?" "By being honest about what we are," Marcus replied. "Humans need to admit that we are evolutionary competitors who eliminate other species through helpfulness. Veltar need to admit that you are vulnerable to this strategy, because you have become too comfortable with your superiority." Zarathel considered this.
"You think my people are weak?"
"I think your people are unprepared," Marcus corrected. "You have been the dominant species in this region of the galaxy for so long that you have forgotten how to compete and adapt. That makes you vulnerable to a species like mine that never stops competing and adapting. So what do you propose? Marcus turned away from the window and looked directly at her. I propose that we tell the truth. To everyone, your people, my people, the Galactic Council, every species that will listen. We tell them what humans really are and what happens to civilizations that encounter us. That would cause panic, Zarathel said. It might restart the war. It might, Marcus agreed. But hiding the truth will not change what happens. It will just make the eventual outcome worse. At least if everyone knows what they are dealing with, they can make informed choices about how to respond. Zarathel walked back to her chair and sat down heavily. What about us? What about our marriage? That depends on you, Marcus said.
I meant what I said about loving you.
But I understand if you cannot love someone whose very existence threatens your species. She looked at him carefully. Do you really love me? Or do you just think you love me because that is what serves humanity's interests? Marcus was quiet for a long time before answering. I do not know, he finally admitted. Human emotions and human survival strategies are so intertwined that it is sometimes impossible to tell them apart. I know that I want to protect you. I know that I enjoy your company. I know that the thought of you being hurt makes me angry in ways that are not entirely logical. But you cannot be sure if those feelings are real or just evolutionary. Programming. Can anyone be sure about their feelings? Marcus asked. Your people live for 1,000 years and claim to understand love better than species with shorter lives. But how do you know that your love is not just biochemical reactions designed to ensure genetic survival? Zarathel had never considered that question before. I suppose I do not know. Then we are both uncertain about the nature of our feelings, Marcus said. The question is whether uncertainty is enough reason to give up on the possibility of something real. Before Zarathel could answer, the ship's communication system activated. Captain Velkaran's voice echoed through the lounge. Princess Zarathel, Captain Chen, please report to the bridge immediately. We have received urgent communications from both the Veltar Empire and Earth. They found the bridge in chaos. Crew members from multiple species were working frantically at their stations, while Captain Velkaran stood in the center, his forearms moving rapidly as he coordinated their efforts. What is happening? Zarathel asked. Your father has discovered information about human history, the captain replied. The Veltar High Command is preparing to launch a preemptive strike against Earth. They believe that humanity represents an existential threat that must be eliminated before it can spread. Further, Marcus checked the tactical displays. How much time do we have? The Veltar Warfleet will reach Earth in 6 days, Captain Velkaran said. The human government is also mobilizing their forces. It appears that both sides are preparing for a final war. Zarathel felt her heart sink. Can we stop them? Not through military force, Marcus said. But we might be able to stop them with information. What do you mean? Marcus turned to face the bridge crew. Captain, I need you to open a communication channel to the entire galaxy. Not just to our governments, but to every species, every world, every thinking being who can receive the signal. That is not possible, Captain Velkaran replied. A galactic broadcast would require authorization from the Galactic Council. Then we ask for emergency authorization, Zarathel said, understanding what Marcus was planning. We tell them that we have information that affects the survival of every species in the galaxy. It took 3 hours to get approval for the broadcast, and by then the Veltar fleet was already moving toward human space. But finally the communication array was activated, and the signal went out to every inhabited world in the galaxy. Zarathel and Marcus stood together in front of the camera, representatives of 2 species that were about to destroy each other. When the transmission began, Zarathel spoke first. People of the galaxy, I am Princess Zarathel of the Veltar Empire. I am speaking to you today because my people are about to make a terrible mistake based on incomplete information. Then Marcus took over. I am Captain Marcus Chen of the human species. I am here to tell you the truth about what humanity is and what we do to other civilizations. For the next hour, they laid out everything. The historical pattern of human contact with other species. The gradual dependence that led to extinction. The unconscious nature of the human threat and the vulnerability of other species to it. They held nothing back, revealing secrets that both their governments had wanted to keep hidden. When they finished, Zarathel made her final statement. We are not asking you to trust us or to stop being afraid. We are asking you to choose your response based on complete information, rather than fear or ignorance. Evolution does not care about our feelings. but we are intelligent beings who can choose how to respond to evolutionary pressure. Marcus concluded, humanity offers both threat and opportunity to every species we encounter. The choice of which one we become depends not just on us, but on how you choose to interact with us. We can compete until only one species survives, or we can evolve together into something greater than any of us could become alone. The transmission ended, and they waited. Within hours, responses began coming in from across the galaxy. Some species called for the immediate quarantine or destruction of humanity. Others proposed various forms of controlled contact and interaction. A few suggested research into new models of interspecies cooperation. Most importantly, both the Veltar War Fleet and the Human Defense Forces stopped their advance, waiting to see how the galaxy would respond to this unprecedented revelation. Standing together on the bridge of the Concordia, watching the flood of responses from thousands of worlds, Zarathel reached out and took Marcus's hand. She still did not know if her feelings for him were real or just biochemical programming. She still did not know if humanity could coexist with other species without destroying them.